everyone, it's Bryony. Welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about why my son will not be in a forward-facing car seat until he's at least 5. So in this video, we're going to be talking about extended rear facing, what that is, why people do it, and also doing an exciting review on the Avionaut Sky. Before I go any further though, I do quickly want to mention that this video is aimed at people who live in the UK or within Europe. There are different rules and regulations depending on where you are in the world, and the UK and European laws are different from, say, the US laws and the Australian laws. So what I'm saying in this video may or may not apply to you depending on where you live. So without further ado, let's jump right on into the video. What is extended rear facing and why do it? Extended rear facing, sometimes abbreviated to ERF, is the practice of keeping a child rear facing beyond the legal minimum, which in the UK is now 15 months old. So then the question is, why do people keep their children rear facing for longer than the minimum age? Well, that's because it's been proven to be 5 times safer for a child 4 and under to rear face than to forward face. This is because the most serious car crashes are usually frontal collisions, and having a child forward facing puts a lot more stress and pressure on their neck than it does if they're rear facing. As an adult, my head is around 6% of my total body weight, but with a baby, their head is around 25% of their total body weight. It's much heavier, so in a crash, that weight is going to have a real impact on how much their neck muscles are stretched. So here is Lyra to help me demonstrate a little bit about how rear facing is so much safer than forward facing. In a frontal collision, her head is going to be thrown forwards like this. The car seat's here. Even if she's strapped in really well, her head's still going to be thrown forwards. And this puts a huge amount of pressure on her neck. In babies and young children, their spine isn't actually fused yet, so it's not able to protect their spinal cord in the same way it is for an older child or for an adult. And so in a car crash, what's going to happen is their head, which remember is a lot heavier than the rest of their body, is going to be thrown forwards, and it's going to be pulled forwards by the velocity of the crash and the impact of that. And that's going to stretch their spinal cord. The spinal cord only has to stretch around ½ an inch to snap, and in a car crash like this it can stretch up to 2 inches. If it snaps, that can cause paralysis and even death. In a rear crash, however, remember we're travelling in this direction still, her head, neck and spine are all going to be cocooned like this. The crash is going to force her body back into the seat, but rather than her head being thrown backwards like this, the seat is going to cocoon her and keep her head, neck and spine in alignment like so, and this is going to drastically reduce the amount of force that she's exposed to, and this massively reduces the chance of any serious injuries to the head, neck and spine. This video here demonstrates it even better, I feel. You can see how the child that's forward facing is thrown forwards much more, whereas the child that's rear facing, head, neck and spine is completely cocooned by the car seat and therefore experiences much less chance of being seriously injured. All car seats that are sold within the UK and Europe have to pass a minimum level of safety testing, and it will either be safety testing under the R44 measures or the R129. Most people won't have heard of either of these terms before, so I'm going to explain to you now what some of the differences between them are. I'm not going to go into lots of detail because honestly it would take up the entire video and I don't want to make it too long, but I am going to link a really good video down below which was done by rear facing toddlers, which goes into much more detail about all the little intricacies between the two different types of regulations. But at its most basic level, R44 is the older regulations that are now being phased out, and R129 are the new regulations which all new car seats that are being manufactured today have to be approved to. That doesn't mean that you don't still find R44 car seats still on the market, because if they were approved before the new regulations came into force, then they're still legal to sell. Some of the main differences between these two types of regulations are the R44 regulations only involved a frontal collision at 32 miles per hour, and they used a crash test dummy that only had 4 sensors on it. R129 regulations, by comparison, involve a frontal collision, also at 32 miles per hour, a side collision at 50 miles per hour, and a rear collision at 80 miles per hour. The dummy that they use in this crash test has 32 sensors on it. Now, like I said before, there are some other differences with it too, and R129 regulations have gradually been introduced in stages since 2013 and are now the standard across the market. And generally speaking, an R129 car seat is going to be safer than an R44 car seat, but that is not always the case if you are buying from a company that always tested above the minimum standards anyway. But if you're buying a car seat on the UK or European market, it will have passed one of these two regulations as a minimum. However, there are car seat safety tests that test above the minimum standards, and 2 of the ones you've possibly heard of are ADAC and the Swedish Plus test. Let's start with ADAC. So ADAC is a German testing that's done. The car seat manufacturers can't ask their car seats to be tested by ADAC. ADAC select the car seats for themselves that they want to test, and they then put them through a number of different tests. Some of them safety features, some about ergonomics, and some about how easy it is to install the car seat, and they then give it an overall score, and that's known as its ADAC test score. The thing to be a little bit wary about here though is that if you're trying to decide on which car seat to buy purely on how safe it is, the ADAC test only takes 50% of the total ADAC score from the safety rating of the car seat, how it performed in the car crash. The rest of the score is made up from a combination of things like ergonomics and how easy the car seat is to install, and some other things too. So because of that, you can get some car seats that are forward facing that perform worse off in the actual safety crash part of the test, but perform better in the ergonomics and the installation process, which get a higher ADAC score than a car seat that performed really well in the crash test that was extended rear facing, but because it's more complicated to install, it then got a worse off overall score. So just be a bit cautious when you're looking at an ADAC score that it's not purely based on how safe that car seat performed in a crash, it's based on other features too. And by the way, if you're in the UK, you might be aware of a company called Which. They also do a similar thing to ADAC, where they take the safety test as part of it, but also like the fabrics, how easy they are to wash and like install and stuff as well. And I'm going to say, like, those are important things to factor in. The kids at some point are going to pee on them or be sick or get food on them, and you're going to need to clean the car seat. And also 48% of children who are killed in crashes are killed because the car seat they were in was not installed correctly. So testing how easy a car seat is to install is very important. But if you're someone like me, for example, who isn't worried about a car seat maybe being a little trickier to install, because I'm happy to take the time to really make sure it's there, but my main factor is how safe the car seat is, you need to be aware that with companies like ADAC and Which, that their recommendation for which is the best car seat is not just based off of safety, it's based off of other things too. So the car seat they may recommend that scores the highest could be a forward-facing car seat that is not going to be safer for your child in the event of a frontal collision than a rear-facing car seat, but because it performed better on other aspects such as the cleaning and the installation, it gets a higher score. So do bear that in mind. The Swedish Plus test, however, is different. In the Swedish Plus test, they are testing for one thing only, and that is the amount of strain that is placed on a child's neck in a frontal collision. The test is done at 35 miles per hour, which is higher than the standard for the R44 or R129, which is 32 miles per hour. But critically with the Swedish Plus test, the stopping distance is much shorter, so it's a much harsher force that is placed on the child's neck than it is in the R44, the R129, and also the ADAC test. It's the strictest test in Europe, the Swedish Plus test. In the Swedish Plus test crash, the 3-year-old Dubby's neck must not be put under more strain than 122 kilograms. This is because it's widely accepted that a child can't survive a car crash where the force is more than 130 kilograms without suffering some form of significant injury. The aim of the Swedish Plus test is to be able to say that if your child is in a Swedish Plus tested car and you're in a serious crash, they will not need to be hospitalised for longer than it takes to do the basic checks. Their neck and body is going to be fully supported, they're not going to suffer a serious injury. And that is why it's notoriously difficult for car seats to pass the Swedish Plus test, but also why so many parents want car seats that are Swedish Plus tested, because they are considered some of the safest on the market. So let's have a look now at some of the most common worries about extended rear-facing car seats. Well, the first concern that I think most parents have when they see the extended rear-facing car seats is, what about their legs? Like, surely they must be uncomfortable if their legs are crossed, or they're dangled over the edge, or they're up on the seats, or are they even safe to have their legs like that? So the first thing to remember is children are a lot more flexible and bendy than we are. They're very happy to have their legs crossed or dangling over the edge or up the back of the seat. It genuinely doesn't bother them. I've had children extended rear-facing in car seats up to the age of 4 or 5 in my car, and I've never had a child complain about having their legs crossed like that. They're very happy to do it, and often you'll notice even in a forward-facing car seat that children like to sit with their legs crossed anyway. When it comes to the concern about are their legs more likely to be broken or injured in a car crash, the answer to that is no, there is no evidence for this whatsoever. But even if, let's say, your child was in a car crash and they did break their leg through this accident, think about what would have happened to their neck if they'd been forward facing. The amount of force that is required in a car crash to do that to your child's legs would just utterly destroy their head, neck and spine. When it comes to a really serious car crash, the car seat you choose might be the decision between whether your child has a broken neck or whether they have a broken leg, and which one you think is easier to fix. And the next most common concern people have about rear-facing car seats is, well, what if you're rear-ended? To show you why this isn't as much of a concern, I need the help of 2 little toy cars. Okay, I have 2 cars here that I'm going to use to demonstrate why you need to worry about frontal collisions more than rear collisions. Let's start off with a frontal collision. So here we have the 2 cars are travelling at a speed of say 30 miles per hour or however fast they're going, and they crash into each other like this. When this happens, there is no gap between the car. All the energy is going to be absorbed by the two cars and reverberated throughout them. So there's nowhere here for any energy to be absorbed other than the impact of the cars itself, because there's no gap between them. They just hit each other and that's it. In a rear collision, however, usually they happen like this, with one car having a rear collision and the other one having a frontal collision going into the back of the car in front of it. And when this happens, there's normally some room between this car and whatever's in front of it. In this case, I'm going to use an elephant because that's currently all I have to demonstrate with. But here we are, these two cars and the elephant are trundling along. This car goes into the back of this one, but in doing so, it pushes this car forwards into the elephant. But when that happens, some of this force, as it's being moved forwards, is being absorbed by that movement. So not all of the energy is being taken by the car. The forward movement is absorbing some of it too. And that makes this rear collision much less serious than the frontal collision, where they're going into each other and there's no room for any energy to be absorbed by anything here, because there's no space for the cars to move forwards. They're just going to go into each other and then probably bounce out like this. But in a rear collision, that car's going to go in front, it's going to push the car forwards, and that's going to spread some of the energy out. So these collisions are usually less serious. Also, they often happen at a lower speed than frontal collisions, where you've got all the energy going into the same direction into each of the cars. The only way where rear facing would really be less safe is if you have a wall and you reverse into that wall at a speed of 30 miles per hour. But I don't know about you, but I don't spend much of my time reversing at 30 miles per hour. But this is the only scenario where really that would be less safe. And so now we move on to the exciting part of this video, which is my review of the Avionaut Sky 2.0. When I was looking at what car seat I wanted to get for my son next, there were some things that were really important for me. I wanted to make sure it was going to be extended rear facing, I wanted a car seat that was Swedish Plus tested, and I wanted something that was going to fit well in my car. And the Avionaut Sky was one of my top 3. So I reached out to Avionaut and said that I was going to be doing this video on extended rear facing, and would they possibly consider sending me a car seat to include in that, and they very kindly said yes. And so I have the beautiful Avionaut Sky 2.0 here in the mint colour. So because this is a review, I'm going to run you through some of the pros and the cons to the car seat so you can see how it works and consider whether or not it might work for you and your family. So starting off with the pros, obviously biggest pro for me, it is Swedish Plus tested. It has passed that really strict test, so you know that if this car seat has been properly installed in your car and you've got your child fitted in it well, it's going to really offer them great protection if you are unfortunate enough to be in a serious car accident. The next pro about this car seat is that it goes up to 25 kilos and 125 centimetres. On average, this car seat will last a child until they are around the age of 6. Most car seat safety experts will tell you that we don't really consider children to be ready for a high back booster until at least the age of 5. And this is an issue if you have one of the rotating car seats that fixed in with Isofix, because they usually have a maximum weight capacity of around 18 kilos and all of them have a maximum height capacity of 105 centimetres. This will only last a child, an average child, until they're around 4 years old. So this means that you have a gap between the age where they're 4 and they've aged out of this seat, and 5 when they're big enough for a high back booster with an adult seat belt. Now you might be thinking in that scenario, well, I'll get a high back booster that has a harness fitted into it. However, those high back booster and harness combinations, the harness is the same height limit as the rotating car seat that you had previously. It's 105 centimetres and usually around 18 kilos as well. So that's not going to help you out at all. Your only option if your child outgrows the rotating car seat but isn't yet big enough to go into a high back booster is to buy an extended rear facing car seat, which of course you could have just bought in the first place. But that's one of the reasons why I really like the Avionaut Sky, is because it is a higher capacity extended rear facing car seat, and certainly in the case of my son who's on the lower end of the centiles, will comfortably fit him until he is high back booster age. The next thing I really love about the Avionaut Sky, and although this isn't necessarily relevant because it's not a safety aspect of the car seat, but I think when you're spending a lot of money on a car seat, it is something that most of us probably want to consider, is that it has a lot of lovely colours. There's 6 different colourways you can choose from with a car seat, and I absolutely love the mint. It's a gorgeous colour, and it's just so pretty. It's nice to have a car seat that's not only safe, but also pretty. Another thing that's really great about this car seat, and one of its biggest selling features, is that it's the most compact extended rear facing car seat on the market. So it's really good if you have a smaller car, or if you have a taller passenger that needs to go in front of the car seat. It's got one of the smallest shells of all the extended rear facing car seats on the market, so if you have a small car, it's the most likely to fit. Another thing I really like about this car seat is the great sleeping position that it puts babies in. When Oren falls asleep in this car seat, he always falls asleep with his head sort of back in the headrest and his chin is nowhere near his neck like this. A lot of the time children might fall asleep like this, and this is not a position you want them to fall asleep in because it risks restricting their esophagus and you don't want them to stop breathing, which is a slightly higher risk if their chin is on the neck. So you really want to avoid that wherever possible, particularly with young babies. But that has never been an issue in the Avionaut Sky. The times that he's fallen asleep when we've been in there, he's always had his head tilted back like this, resting in the car seat, so I know he's in a really good position. And finally, one of my favourite things about the Avionaut Sky is just how incredibly padded it is. Oren absolutely loves this car seat, and I only realised just how padded and comfy this car seat was when recently my dad ended up dropping us home from their house one time where we I think travelled there by train, and we used the car seat that they have, which is Oren's old Cybex infant carrier, and he cried the entire way home. He was not a happy boy in that car seat, and it made me realise he has never cried since he's been in his Avionaut Sky. Like, it is so padded and so comfortable. Even on the evenings we come home from my parents' house on a Sunday, having had dinner there, and he's really tired, he's very happy in this car seat. It's obviously really comfy for him, and you can just feel it. It's so soft and well padded, and just, I want to sit in there, let alone him. So that's definitely one of the biggest pros, I think, because having happy children in their car seats makes your driving life much easier. So now let's move on to some of the cons of this car seat. Well, the first one is actually same as one of the pros I mentioned, which is this is a really compact, small car seat. The problem with the compactness is that if you have a larger child, so a child who I'd say is above the 75th centile for their weight and height, they're not going to get as much use out of this car seat as they potentially could out of a extended rear facing car seat that has a higher weight capacity. Because the shell is a bit shorter, which is what allows it to fit better in smaller cars, it does mean if you have a child with a particularly long torso, they're probably not going to be able to last the full 125 centimetres worth of it because their upper body is going to be taller than, say, their legs are. But if your child is below the 75th centile for weight and height, I think you'll still comfortably be able to get them in this car seat until 5 or 6, which is, as we said before, safe high back booster age. So it's still worth considering even if you have a slightly bigger child, if you have a small car, but just bear in mind you might not get as much use out of it as some of the other extended rear facing car seats on the market. The next con is that it is quite complex to install. This is the case, by the way, with pretty much every extended rear facing car seat on the market. There's only 1 or 2 car seats that do extended rear face beyond the 105 centimetres and 18 kilogram limit that most of them do, and they are ISOFIX fitted and they are very expensive. So if you're getting a car seat that is a little bit more affordable and will extended rear face up to, and they also don't go up to 25 kilos, they go up to like 23 kilos. But if you want a car seat that can extend rear face up to 36 kilos and 125 centimetres in height, then your only option is to get one that is seatbelt installed. And this does involve a little bit more of a complex installation because they have tethers. As you can see, the Avionaut Sky has 2 tethers and a support leg, and it is installed with a seatbelt. So it is a bit fiddly to do. Once you have fitted it into the car and it's installed properly and you've got someone to check it, however, it's absolutely fine. I think it took me like half an hour to fit it and check it and make sure it was properly installed, and you know, I was comfortable with it, and I sent it off to Avionaut to double check for me too. And because I use it just in my car and it stays in there permanently, this is not an issue for me. But if you're someone who needs to move your car seat between cars frequently, then I think these style of tethered and seatbelt fitted seats might not be the answer for you. You might be better off spending a bit more to go for one of the really expensive ISOFIX ones that is really quick to change between cars, just because it is quite a process to move it between them. If you do plan to move it between car seats though, one thing you could consider doing is buying an extra set of tethers and leaving the tethers installed in each of the cars you're going to be using it in, and then all you have to do is unclip them and unclip the seatbelt and move the seat across that way. It will make installation just that little bit easier. But I would still say that in general this is a car seat that is ideal if you're going to be fitting it into one car and leaving it there, rather than a car seat you're going to be moving frequently back and forth between cars. And finally, the last con to this car seat is the price. At £379, it is certainly not the most expensive of the extended rear facing car seats on the market, but that is still quite a lot of money for many people, so it's just one thing I felt I needed to mention. For me, like, I can't put a price on my child's life, and if you're wanting a really safe car seat, you are going to have to spend more money to get it. And I do think the Avionaut Sky is definitely value for money, but I do feel I need to mention it because £379 is a lot of money to many people. It is worth noting though, if you have a slightly older child, say 2 or over, who you are wanting to get an extended rear facing car seat for, maybe you put them forward facing and now you really want them to go backwards, or maybe you're just not happy with the car seat they're currently in and you're looking to buy a better extended rear facing car seat, then you might be able to consider the Avionaut Sky Q. It's the same car seat as the Avionaut Sky 2.0, however it doesn't have any of the infant inserts into it. For that reason, your child really does need to be 2 or older, because the way the Avionaut works is that you take various bits out of the car seat at a time. So you basically remove the side pads, you can remove the inner inserts, you take bits of it as and when you need to, but that means you do tend to still be using bits until a child is at least around the age of 2. So if you have a bigger child who isn't going to need any of those inserts, you can consider getting the Sky Q, and that doesn't come with any of them, and it is about £100 cheaper. I would recommend though, if you are considering buying the Sky Q, that you approach the retailer first and ask them if they think that's a suitable car seat for your child. They'll ask them details like the age, the height and the weight of your child, and they'll be able to tell you whether that's a suitable car seat for them. Like I said before, making sure a child's in a correctly installed car seat that they fit in well is just as important for their safety as buying a safe car seat. But overall, I've absolutely loved the Avionaut Sky car seat, and I'm so pleased that Avionaut agreed to send one to me. I did initially really miss the spin feature of my previous car seat. I had a Cybex Cloud Z which had a rotating base, and I do really love that rotation feature, and I had previously had rotation car seats. But I have to say, I was surprised how quickly I got over that. I think within a week, I was like, oh, actually, this really isn't too bad. You figure out how to put them in, and then you get them strapped in, and you're like, oh, this actually isn't as big of a deal as I thought it would be. So I did want to mention that because I know that's a concern a lot of people have. They think like the rotating car seats are really practical, and they're worried about like how difficult it's going to be to put a child in without the rotating car seat. But like, honestly, it was not as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be. I missed it a little bit initially, but now like I don't even notice it, to be honest. So yeah, I would 100% recommend the Avionaut Sky if it's something you're considering, and I really hope this video was helpful in giving you some of the pros and cons of the car seat so you can work out if it's the right one for your family. A massive thank you to Avionaut for sending me the Sky to review in this video and to show to you guys. I will leave a link to their website down below, which also you can go on to find out where your nearest retailer is, and a list of retailers that you can choose to buy from if you wish to. As always, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I do hope this video was helpful to those of you out there who are maybe considering extended rear facing or wondering why it's safer. I really want to make sure that everyone can keep their children as safe as possible and have easy access to information that they need. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Do please subscribe and have a great day. Bye, everyone.